The art of borrowing from history for your branding is not a new one, not in Leicester at least. In the spring of 1884, when a bunch of lads in the Foss Road area came together to form their own football team, the name of an old Roman thoroughfare lent a touch of class to their venture too. As the Foss is known throughout the land, so the new club shall be known to the future. That's the legendary quote, attributed to the club co-founder Frank Gardner and reputedly uttered at a meeting in a garden shed near the Foss Road, King Richard's Road junction. Many of his fellow Foss pioneers had been scholars at the prestigious Wigston School, and most had attended Bible class at the nearby Emmanuel Church. They formed a committee amongst themselves, paid 9p subs and another 9p towards a ball. Their first game was on a private field off the Foss Road, and the opponents were Syston Foss. Kitted out in black jerseys with a blue sash and long white trousers, the first Foss team had an average age of 16 and included 3 Johnson brothers. 13-year-old goalkeeper Ernest Smith kept a clean sheet as his side ran out 5-0 winners. The rest of the season's home fixtures were played out on Victoria Park, which until a year before had been the town's racecourse. The emphasis was wholly on participation. The notion of the game as a spectator sport was still some way off. Nicknamed the Fossils, or ironically the Ancients, the youthful club changed its colours to chocolate and blue halves and ambitiously arranged to play their home games at the Belgrave Road Sports Ground, where they could charge admission to an increasingly curious public. Elsewhere, the Football League was about to come into being, the brainchild of William McGregor. The club affirmed their progressive reputation by signing their first professional, centre-forward Harry Webb. For the next term, Foss obtained their own enclosure on the canal side site on Mill Lane. Their primacy amongst town clubs was now undeniable, and the Midland League invited them into its ranks in 1891. From that base, they captured their first silverware as a side captained by Jimmy Johnson held aloft the County Cup. However, the town council took over the Mill Lane site for building purposes, but benefactor Joseph Johnson negotiated and guaranteed the lease of land in the Walnut Street development area. By November, the rudimentary enclosure on Filbert Street was ready for football, and Foss had a home that would last for 110 years until surrendered to rather different developers. In the meantime, ever-present goalkeeper Jimmy Thraves, who actually wore an overcoat throughout a snowy game against Doncaster, and exciting winger Billy Dorrell were among the Fossils who finished second in their final Midland League campaign. Foss stood for election to the National Second Division and on May the 21st, 1894 were voted in. They got off to a bad start with 5 defeats in the opening 6 games, but recovered strongly to finish 4th. They also registered their all-time highest FA Cup score with a 13-0 eclipse of Notts Olympic. It would be another 4 years before Foss again challenged seriously for promotion, a 3rd place finish in 1899. But on-field action was anything but dull. The ground was taking shape, the club drawing bigger crowds. Backroom changes, including the adoption of limited company status, had seen several secretary managers come and go, with the most colourful William Dickinson Clark leaving under a cloud. He'd paid one amateur goalkeeper and poached another, the law student Godfrey Beardsley from Loughborough. The managerial merry-go-round would steady under the 14-year tenure of George Johnson, who'd previously organised the annual fundraising club sports day. But Foss's fortunes would dip before they rose again, quite literally, in that the club was now regularly experiencing financial difficulties, but in a sporting sense too. The blue and white kit that we now regard as traditional had been adopted, but its wearers were soon anchored to the bottom of the league and survived only thanks to re-election in 1904. Few Foss players were exactly household names. Arthur Collins would later thrill crowds at Fulham, but Ike Evanson was a more typical journeyman pro. The veteran Jimmy Blessington would become Foss's first player manager, but poor Harry Ashby had his career ended prematurely by a broken leg. Ranji Hubbard was a local hero of a forward, and Tal Lewis a decent goalkeeper who nonetheless remained better known for his Somerset cricketing exploits. The team of 1907-8 somehow gelled, though, under the captaincy of the former England centre-half Billy Bannister, and it found itself promoted to Division 1 after a fine late-season run and a last-match triumph at Stoke. Filbert Street would now host top-flight football, and even the souvenir merchants were taking notice of the Foss. Elevation, though, was a short-lived affair, as Foss tumbled straight back into the second, despite the belated introduction of Scottish international Andy Aitken as player-manager. Bad luck excused a few results over the season, but not the 12-0 defeat suffered at Nottingham Forest. Explanations for that had to be proffered to a Football League inquiry chaired by J.J. Bentley, who accepted that the team had a collective hangover following the wedding of former teammate Leggy Turner. The Foss had now joined the ranks of clubs producing a matchday programme. Even so, a fine run to the quarter-finals of the FA Cup in 1910, ending in an honourable exit at Newcastle, was a rare highlight of a mediocre team. New manager Jack Bartlett shook things up, introducing a succession of southern-based amateur players, but to little effect. Finances were now getting perilous, and on-field disasters persisted. 1913, for instance, saw Southern League side Norwich City take Foss embarrassingly apart in the FA Cup on a snowy Filbert Street pitch. Foss at least attempted to make some publicity capital out of their pauperdom. Tom Waterall, a member of the £105 team, was one of only 3 players to have cost a fee at all. The investment, or lack of it, paid off to the extent that Foss escaped having to apply for re-election on goal average only. But even that finishing level was beyond them in the war-shadowed campaign that followed. At least the context of conflict and carnage across the Channel put Foss's struggles into some sort of perspective. They were condemned to their second application for re-election some time before their final fixture at Clapton Orient. The topical budget newsreel hardly knew whether to cover the occasion as a sporting event or as an army recruitment exercise, but at least caught footage of skipper Horace Burton and of Charles Barron's own goal in the 2-0 defeat. Wartime regional football would occupy the next 4 seasons, and the club would re-emerge into peacetime somewhat transformed. June 1919 saw a rare royal visit to Leicester. The presence in the town of George V and Queen Mary was an immediate portent of the restoration of Leicester's status as a city. Meanwhile, a debt-laden Foss had gone into liquidation. The reconstructed club would take advantage of the new civic status and floated itself as Leicester City Football Club. Scotsman Peter Hodge was appointed manager, and his initial team building was aimed at establishing the new club in a generally booming local sporting economy. Top quality fare invariably brought out the Leicester crowds, as shown by the reception for the All Blacks at Welford Road and the touring Australians at Ayleston Road. City were understandably inconsistent at second division level, but had a fine, profitable cup run, which ended in front of King George at Stamford Bridge. The following year, Filbert Street was graced with a new main stand, and a new average attendance record of over 17,000 was set.
How did we come? As thousands of people came in those days. We came on cycles because you had no fear of your cycle being nicked, because all these people who lived in these terraced houses round about here stood on their footpath, the pavement outside their house on a Saturday afternoon or match day, and as you rode past, look after your bike for tuppence, look after your ball penny, look after your bike for tuppence. And you got off and pushed your bike up the entry, left it there. There were probably 50 bikes in the one entry, two gardens, 50.
Put Foss's struggles into some sort of perspective. They were condemned to their second application for re-election some time before their final fixture at Clapton Orient. The topical budget newsreel hardly knew whether to cover the occasion as a sporting event or as an army recruitment exercise, but at least caught footage of skipper Horace Burton and of Charles Barron's own goal in the 2-0 defeat. Wartime regional football would occupy the next 4 seasons, and the club would re-emerge into peacetime somewhat transformed. June 1919 saw a rare royal visit to Leicester. The presence in the town of George V and Queen Mary was an immediate portent of the restoration of Leicester's status as a city. Meanwhile, a debt-laden Foss had gone into liquidation. The reconstructed club would take advantage of the new civic status and floated itself as Leicester City Football Club. Scotsman Peter Hodge was appointed manager, and his initial team building was aimed at establishing the new club in a generally booming local sporting economy. Top quality fare invariably brought out the Leicester crowds, as shown by the reception for the All Blacks at Welford Road and the touring Australians at Ayleston Road. City were understandably inconsistent at second division level, but had a fine, profitable cup run, which ended in front of King George at Stamford Bridge. The following year, Filbert Street was graced with a new main stand, and a new average attendance record of over 17,000 was set.
How did we come? As thousands of people came in those days. We came on cycles because you had no fear of your cycle being nicked, because all these people who lived in these terraced houses round about here stood on their footpath, the pavement outside their house on a Saturday afternoon or match day, and as you rode past, look after your bike for tuppence, look after your ball penny, look after your bike for tuppence. And you got off and pushed your bike up the entry, left it there. There were probably 50 bikes in the one entry, two gardens, 50.
Saw a new record low attendance set. Played as a double-header after a Manchester United fixture at Old Trafford, only 13 people paid to see the second part of the double bill between City and Stockport. After only missing promotion in 1923 on goal average, Peter Hodges' City took the second division championship in 1925. An 18-game unbeaten run featuring 7 successive victories was largely responsible. The same season, the team reached the cup quarter-finals once more, going out to a late Cardiff winner netted directly from a corner, the first goal so scored since the rules allowed it. City had a sensational forward line, dynamic Hughie Adcock on the right wing, the left flank pairing of the muscular George Carr and the tricky Harold Wadsworth, and the deadly combination of thoughtful schemer Johnny Duncan and the bull in a china shop goalscorer Arthur Chandler.
In the 20s, football was a man's game. You know, you were about right size for a goalkeeper, and I'm Arthur Chandler, and if you caught that goal, you caught that ball 3 yards off the line, you finished up in the back of the bloody net, boy, and it was a goal for me. Football then was somewhere to go on Saturday afternoon to be entertained, and I'm not exaggerating, you could go to a match and the result could be 1-1 draw, and you'd walk away and say, hey, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. Damn good game that was. You wouldn't do it now, because somebody's got to win.
A crowded treatment room often resulted from that style of football, but fun with electricity and artificial sunshine could be had there as well. It's a miracle any players were fit at all. Sometimes even the fans couldn't stomach the physical side of the game. This supporter fainted when George Carr broke his leg against Leeds and was revived by City players wielding the magic sponge. Hodge spent a record £3,300 on Manchester United's Class C prompter Arthur Lockhead and a further £3,000 on Barnsley marksman Ernie Hine as the club looked to consolidate. Willie Orr replaced Hodge when he was spirited away by Manchester City. But the impetus was not lost. A Highbury draw was an early pointer to City's increasing acclimatisation to the top flight, and after 7 games stood proudly at the head of the First Division table for the first time ever. Even a drop to a final placing of 7th still represented a best-ever season. It was a boom time, and in 1927, Filbert Street saw the erection of its landmark double-decker stand.
I mean, it was a good stand, that double-decker, you know, and the main stand was pretty good. But the popular side, you know, was very narrow. We used to be about half a dozen policemen. Never used to get any trouble. Never used to have any trouble at all.
Not long after this game against Bolton came the remodelled ground's biggest test and its all-time biggest gate. 47,298 occupied every vantage point the ground offered, including the adventurous souls who scaled the Filbert Street End roof for a 5th round FA Cup tie against Spurs. City finished 3rd in 1927-28, 5 points behind the champions Everton, and a season later rose to runners-up spot in the table, just pipped to the title by Sheffield Wednesday. The campaign started with this 1-1 draw at Old Trafford and generally gave few signs of the excitements to come. But a City side steeped in experience and a fine mix of muscle and artistry was soon to burst into the headlines. Johnny Duncan would see his proud record of 6 goals in a game scored against Port Vale on Christmas Day 1924 equalled.
Arthur Chandler against Portsmouth scored 6 goals in a match which Leicester won 10-0. Channy had scored 5, and there across the sky came 5 beautiful swans slipping away. And all the crowd said, Channy, oi, 5 swans, Channy, look, 5, you scored 5. See? Everybody cheered and clapped and so forth. I don't know how many minutes elapsed, a few minutes elapsed, when there was what I would call tail end Charlie, an old one, you know, the last one left in line. Came another swan coming on, trying to catch up. And everybody saw, hey, there's another book up there, Chuck, score another one, Chuck, score another one. And he did. So the 5 swans became 6, and Channy's 5 goals became 6 goals. That's true. I was there. I saw it.
He used to score goals, he did. That's all he could do. He couldn't play football, but he used to get the goal. How he used to score, I don't know. Here we are, Cock went up the wing and he come and he began to keep coming in towards the goal post. And he drew the goalkeeper out his position, and he just lobbed the ball to Channy, and Channy, you know that line in between the posts, he was standing on there. All he had to do was let it hit him. No, he tried to kick it, and that would have finished over the bar. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Sepp Smith would star for City over the next 20 years. The youngest of 7 brothers from the northeast, he was the 5th to enter professional football.
When there used to be the close season, you know, and they used to all come home. And they used to all bring a new ball with them. And they used to get me on the playing field next to the school and where I lived. And they used to coach me on that. Derby wanted me. And Portsmouth wanted me, yeah. And with my brother Jack and brother Billy, I played for Portsmouth, you see. And of course they said, you're not coming to Portsmouth. I said, why? Well, he said, it's too far away from home. I said, all right. My brother Joe was at Leicester at the time, so I finished up with Leicester.
City had not sustained their title challenge in 1930, but their creative linchpin was still acknowledged to be Johnny Duncan. But he took over the licence of the Turk's Head pub in direct contravention of the club's rules and was therefore deemed to have terminated his own contract. They were also losing defensive consistency. The following season, goalkeeper Jim McLaren was beaten 8 times by Grimsby, and Jack Beebe let in 7 against Arsenal. Team spirits were drooping, and typical was an incident involving Beebe in a punch-up with his teammate Billy Jackson. Mind you, McLaren, it has to be recorded, wasn't shy of throwing the odd punch.
When they were attacking in the goal, and if somebody sent the ball across, you know, he would come out to punch the ball away, you know, and at the same time he would punch the bloke in the back of the head or something like that. Yeah, you had to see him do that regular. Yeah.
But at least Leicester now had a champion in the legitimate fight game, with local boxer Reggie Mean taking the British heavyweight crown at the Granby Halls. As City slumped, manager Willie Orr resigned, and just days after they'd been knocked out of the FA Cup in this tie at Newcastle, City confirmed the return of Peter Hodge.
Oh, a smashing bloke, yeah. He used to come to me and say, Sepp, how long since you've been at home? Oh, I say about six weeks or something like that. He says, right, you're going home next weekend. And that's what he used to do. Pay for fare and everything. The way he used to come and talk to you now, as if you were his son, you know. Yeah. The best manager I've ever played under.
It was Hodge who cannily withdrew Sepp into the half-back line, playing just in front of long-serving skipper Adam Black. Another goalkeeping McLaren, Sandy of that ilk, was recruited during the second of 2 relegation dogfights, and the very real threat of a drop to Division 2 was narrowly avoided. City were now essentially a side whose key figures were ageing together, but their search for rejuvenating talent was a bit haphazard. For instance, their scout remained unimpressed by the young Stanley Matthews. Roger Hayward assumed the captaincy and led City on a cup run that took them within 90 minutes of Wembley. Young Archie Gardner was signed from Hearts and made a whirlwind impact with 4 goals on his debut at Portsmouth. But Pompey would prove sterner opposition on Cup semi-final day at St Andrews.
Well, my favourite memories is the semi-final at Birmingham, you know, against Portsmouth. My mother comes into this. The reporters went to go see him, you know. They said to me, Mother, now, who do you want to win the cup? Jackie or Bill or Sepp? She said, oh, I think we better get our Jack and Bill. She said, they're older than him. He'll get his time a bit later on.
What a crowd. Pompey will represent the South on the great day. Their 4-1 defeat of Leicester City pays the entrance fee to Wembley. It'll be their second final in 5 years. Weddell, Pompey's centre-forward, who did the hat-trick, shone brightly. He was all over the field, always popping up where Leicester least expected him.
Portsmouth was the best side. We didn't play well. We were struggling all the time.
In the event, Sepp would miss out on Wembley again some 15 years later, and within 6 months of the semi-final, Peter Hodge had tragically passed away. Arthur Lockhead was promoted from the playing ranks to succeed him. The club, however, would celebrate its Golden Jubilee season with a return to Division 2, missing survival by a single point. Welsh internationals Di Jones and Taffy O'Callaghan were among the new blood introduced in vain as the relegation scenario developed. Lockhead was replaced by Frank Womack, who turned fortunes round with one masterstroke signing. Jack Bowers with 33 goals in only 27 games. He fired City, now skippered by Sepp Smith, to a remarkable championship win.
People ask me who was the best footballer, I would say Sepp Smith.
Well, Sepp was a ball player. It was unusual in those days to have ball players, you know, that could manipulate the ball. I remember seeing Sepp in the dressing room with his new boots, and they used to have big toes on them, toe tectors, you know. And he got his boots on his feet and his socks in a bucket of water, hot water, softening the toe so he could feel the ball, you know. That's the type of player he was. He was a sort of, a Beckham type of player that you get today. It was all surprising that Sepp only got one cap, one England cap. I always thought he was worth more.
Football then days, it used to be all attacking. It never used to rely on just defend, so you still get a point, make sure they get a point. We used to go out to win, you know. It was more open, but when we played. The set-up was different, you know. You see, you got the goalkeeper, and then you got the two full backs, that's the right and the left, right? And then you got right half, centre half, and left half. And then you got the right winger, inside right, centre forward, inside left and outside left, and that's how they used to go, you see. They used to play that way.
Leicester City took the field first at Stamford Bridge for their match against Chelsea, and the home team gave a highly satisfactory account of themselves. They won their match by 3-0, and that's always a good thing to do on the home ground, because then the spectators know they're getting value for money. This was a brisk game, played in lovely sunshine. Now that winter is on the way, we seem to be getting a nice bit of summer. 3-0 was the sum total of victory by the white-shorted pensioners. Here comes one of them. A throw-in sent the ball to Mills, who headed past goalie McLaren.
City's reputation as a yo-yo club and that Chelsea defeat contributed to a typical cycle of 2 yearly spells in each division. City would start the 39-40 season in the second division, but wouldn't finish that set of fixtures for 7 years. With World War II raging, football was regarded either as an irrelevant sideshow or a valuable morale booster. The league was suspended, and so sensationally were the City board and a number of players after illegal additions to wages.
It used to be scaling, you know. As a professional, you're on £4. And then as you get signed up the next season, you get on 5. So you're not going to carry on. But if you played in the first team, you got first team money, that was £8.
Well, there was some rumpus at the time about paying players underhanded. I think most of the directors got kicked off the board, sigh and die. So it meant they had no directors at all. And father had put £1,000 in the club at that time to help them out, you know, as a loan. Well, of course, they couldn't pay him.
Other literal bombshells were to affect Leicester City. On the night of an horrendous German blitz of Coventry in 1941, a stray bomb hit Filbert Street, badly damaging the main stand. A year later, the same stand suffered a serious fire.
Strangely enough, the German prisoners were at Stoughton Road in a camp down there, and we had to go and fetch them out. I went actually in a lorry to fetch them out, and they built it up. Brick by brick. So they blew the bloody thing down and they built it up again. And I tell you what, that stand was brilliant. What they did was absolutely fantastic. Well, of course, a lot of clubs got bombed out. I mean, Wolverhampton was bombed, the ground was bombed, so they couldn't play. We had Billy Wright and Jimmy Mullen come to play for us as guest players. I mean, Jimmy Mullen was 17 and I think Billy Wright was 18.
They haven't won the FA Cup, but they won during the war, a Midlands Cup. And I was taking a party of people around here, the old stadium, and we were playing Wolverhampton reserves, and the door opened, and in came Billy Wright. Excuse me, Mr. Wright, I said, I know you played for Leicester City during the war. Did you play this cup competition? Let me have a look. Yes, I did, I said, yes. I've still got my medal. I'll tell you something else. I can tell you the numbers of all the buses I had to catch to Wolverhampton to get to Leicester. 18 from Wolverhampton to Birmingham, 19 from Birmingham to Coventry, so we have to at least, because in those days you got no petrol, you see.
A week before that Midland Cup win, City missed out on another final in the National League War Cup as Filbert Street hosted the second leg of the semi-final.
Arsenal won the right to meet Preston in the final when they played Leicester City at Leicester. The visitors, who started 1 goal up, were hard-pressed at first. Number 10 is the City's inside left, Fagan, doing some pretty work, which was followed not long afterwards with the opener by Lee. Then Arsenal got going, and a free kick was turned to good advantage by Crayston. There was a four-legged footballer at this match too, playing for the home team, I think. But in spite of him, Arsenal scored again when Leslie Compton netted from the spot.
The post-horn gallop has been a fixture at Leicester City for over 60 years. Adopted by the club because of the county's tradition of hunting, it is in fact an old 19th century coachman's tune, originally played to let townspeople know that the mail was arriving.
I started playing at the City in 1941. It has, and still does, have a marvellous effect. I started playing at the City in 1941. It has, and still does, have a marvellous effect. As soon as you play the first two notes, then of course the crowd go in an absolute uproar and you can't hear anything else.
In 1942, City did win one of the regional league competitions, despite the makeup of the side changing on an almost weekly basis.
You never knew who was going to be in the team from one week to another. I mean, not only me, but with the guest players that were stationed in the area. I always used to like playing with Frankie Sue. He was a footballer, in my opinion. I wouldn't class me as a good footballer. I was more the marker man. I don't know how many red cards I'd have got today, I'm sure.
It was only when the war swung in favour of the Allies that notions of considered team rebuilding for the future arose. City's optimistic investments included one teenager from Teesside.
I've got Don Revuch signed up here at Leicester. He come down for a trial from Middlesbrough that way. They found him a job as a bricklayer, and he stayed with us during the war.
And Sepp took a liking to Don Revy when he came, and he made him into a great footballer.
Don Revy and I more or less had our first team game with Sepp. I was inside rights, Don was on the wing and Sepp was at the right half.
I remember a match, Don Revy playing in a match when there's a wing half-back, which he normally was. Somebody was injured and he played inside forward, then he played it right back. And eventually it was the outstanding player on the field, wherever you put him.
Tom Mather was the second of City's wartime managers, yet his only competitive games were in the revived FA Cup, a short-lived affair after a two-leg defeat to Chelsea. Soon afterwards he left too, with the old stalwart Johnny Duncan taking up the reins. When league football resumed in 1946, Duncan's attack was spearheaded by wartime discovery Jack Lee from Corn and local pre-war signing George Dewis. They assisted City to 9th place respectability and a fair FA Cup showing, terminated by Newcastle in a replay after this game on Tyneside.
A 45,000 crowd braved the snow and ice to watch a game packed with thrills. The result, a 1-1 draw. Newcastle supporters had worked hard to clear the ground of the heavy fall of snow. Despite the icebound pitch, the game was played at cup-tie pace. For the Tynesiders, £13,000 inside left Len Shackleton was the hero of the side. It was Shackleton against Joe Calvert, Leicester's goalkeeper. Only his acrobatic saves kept the ball out of Leicester's net. 23-year-old Shackleton scored Newcastle's only goal, and here is the movement that brought it about. The inside left slips the ball past the advancing Leicester goalie. Newcastle's defence faltered when Leicester took a corner kick. Centre-forward Dewis took his chance, a flick of the head, and...
George was a good player and very good with his head. Used to keep some greyhounds, did George. And not that I was too much of a betting man, but George used to come, he said, "I'm took my greyhound for a long old run today on my bike because I don't want it to win tonight."
1947-8 was more distinguished by incidentals, a transfer deal that saw 5 City men signed by Watford on the same day, and City's reserves picking up national silverware in the form of the Football Combination Cup. Dramatic this season wasn't, as opposed to the campaign that followed. When City adopted a club crest, they could hardly have expected to have worn it on the players' shirts in a showpiece Wembley outing within months.
Whoever got drawn against, I used to go and have a look at them and see what they play like, and I used to come back and tell our team what to do, what not to do.
Number 4.
Birmingham City
24.
will play Leicester City.
We had a replay with Birmingham. We went there, drew, came back here and won. Preston was a second game. We won 2-0. I believe Tom Finney was playing real gentleman. And the third game was Luton.
When we drew 5-5.
It was a real slushy pitch, and a lot of us were going down with cramp.
We were losing 4-5, and 2 minutes to go. I think it was Mel Griffiths took the corner from the right, and Jack Lee stuck it in the net. So, I mean, that was 5-5, absolutely unbelievable. What a game that was, brilliant.
We came back here, and I think it was 3-3 here. We went and made it 4-3. They came back, and I thought they had a goal, but it was disallowed. And then we went straight back, made it 5-3, and that's how it finished. And then, because we were at Brentford.
The London team, in stripes, played their usual polished game, but seemed from the start to lack the speed and punch of Leicester. Every minute, the Leicester fans were looking for a goal, and here it comes, headed in by Jack Lee. The second half, and with Brentford making an uphill fight of it, Leicester crammed on the pace. 15 minutes to go, and now Leicester make doubly sure with a second goal by Mel Griffiths. Leicester had well earned their place in the semi-final.
The semi-final was at Arsenal against the top dogs in the First Division, Portsmouth.
Great side, brilliant side. And we were second from bottom of the second division. So we hadn't got a chance, really.
So they said. I remember Johnny Duncan had us in the changing room before the game playing Halsey Halsey. You know, the bingo. I don't know who the caller was, perhaps he was the caller, I don't know. But he said this will calm your nerves down, and well, it must have done some good.
Leicester City, a second division team, didn't show any signs of an inferiority complex when they led the way onto the ground. Portsmouth kicked off, looked as if they were going to settle everything quickly, but Leicester had a different tale to tell. Presently Griffiths on the wing passed the ball to Lee. Lee switched it to Reevy, whose shot gave Butler no chance of saving at all. The equalising goal came after half an hour when Ewell made a long pass down the centre. Harris raced after it, closely pursued by Plummer. And then with a swift, low shot, Harris banged the ball home. With the score 1-1 at half-time, Pompey still looked decisive winners, but it was not to be. For 2 minutes after the changeover, Chisholm gathered up a pass in the penalty area and steered the ball into the net. Portsmouth, now fighting back hard, thought they'd got on equal terms again when Harris shot completely wide, right in front of an open goal. This seemed to inspire Leicester City, and a few minutes later they scored their third goal through Reevy. Leicester supporters, of course, were overjoyed, for now they could see their team at Wembley. But they wonder why he looked so glum. Indigestion?
Revenge for the 1934 semi-final defeat by Pompey was sweet indeed, and Cup fever had its inevitable consequences. So many ticket applications and unusual media interest.
Reeve, Lee, Chisholm and Walter Harrison of Leicester City's team are busily keeping in trim for the great battle of Wembley. Should Leicester beat Wolves on the day, they'll be the first second division side to win the Cup since West Bromwich won it in 1931. It should be a great match anyway, and these Leicester lads mean to win. King, Reeve, Chisholm, Walter Harrison, Jelly, Plummer, the 23-year-old captain. And, of course, Bradley, Lee, Scott, Griffiths and Adam. Their goalie with a broken finger, McGraw on the left, may not be fit for Wembley, but Adam's elbow is expected to be all right. Anyway, manager Johnny Duncan is very confident.
I've always had the greatest confidence in my team going to Wembley this year, and which I think they'll win the Cup.
Aside from bingo, however, Duncan had other ways of helping his players, not all perhaps legal.
We used to call them pet pills to keep us going, energy pills. I don't know what was in them. We never did ask.
Then you got Mel Griffiths, who used to have a glass of whiskey before he went on the pitch. Give him the courage to go on.
Sadly, though, injuries hit hard. McGraw was one casualty, but the absence of playmaker Don Reeve led to the first major Cup final selection controversy.
When I see the Cup final team, I thought, oh dear, we can't win this. Put Jimmy Harrison centre forward, where he was a full back, you know. And I felt sorry for Jim, because he wasn't used to playing there, you know, and got no chance.
The Duke of Gloucester and the Duke of Edinburgh, walking with the Earl of Athlone, came out to inspect the 211s. Plummer wins the toss. So the Wolves kick off, and the Cup final, which so many had thought would be fought out by quite different teams, gets underway. Gordon Bradley, Leicester's reserve goalie, was soon given a really gruelling test, but he rose to the great occasion magnificently. Johnny Hancock's, number 7, Wolves' right winger, was playing great football. His speed and control was terrific. It was in the 12th minute that a perfect centre from Hancock's gave Jesse Pye the very chance he was looking for. Wolves' second score followed a lead from right. Jimmy Dunn has a shot, the ball comes back to Pye, and it's a goal! Leicester kicked off after the interval and promptly began to show that they were by no means beaten yet. Within 2 minutes, their all-out attack was rewarded. Jack Lee had a shot which Williams parried, but Mal Griffiths netted. This was one of the thrills of the game, so here's another impression of how Leicester did it. Crook tried to save, but failed. Yes, the most surprising things do happen at Cup finals, and Leicester clearly still had a chance. They continued their great effort to get on terms, and presently it looked as if they'd succeeded when Ken Chisholm beat Williams with a hard drive, but was given offside, and certainly looked it.
It was a goal. Yeah, it wasn't offside. I was out. Everybody. Referee said he was going to.
And they went straight up and scored to make it 3-1. If we'd have got the equaliser, it would have, no doubt, instilled confidence, you know, that we had got a chance.
For Leicester enthusiasts, of course, that was a big disappointment. On the field, too, things seemed to be hotting up a bit. But, of course, all that's nothing to the mental strain on every true fan. Finally, Sammy Smythe dribbled past one man after another and then put in a shot for Wolves that gave Bradley no chance. That was virtually the end. And when Billy Wright and his men went up to receive cup and medals from Princess Elizabeth, they had undoubtedly earned their triumph.
Well, it was a marvellous game here, and I'm happiest man in the world today, but I would like to congratulate Leicester on a very, very sporting game.
The Wembley performance was in truth heroic, and the people of Leicester welcomed the team home as if they'd won. Sonny Morris was a forceful if temperamental prompter, and the younger Derek Hogg, a mazy dribbler who found success after switching flanks from right to left to partner Rowley. Norman Bullock's prophecy was to prove remarkably accurate. Promotion came in 1954 on the back of Rowley's goals and a bit of gimmickry.
He used to have oxygen, and he used to give the players oxygen before they went on the pitch. And it was something never anybody else had done. Why did I don't know.
Well, a 9-2 win over Lincoln resulted from its first use, but it was the crucial victory at Blackburn over Easter that really mattered. The title was City's on-goal average. Skipper Matt Gillies received the second division trophy, but Bullock's management methods were to prove less successful in the top flight, though apparently he was very much something of a hands-off boss in the first place.
The day that I was due to sign for Leicester City, I left Scarborough at 8 on the morning on a train that I'd never been on a train before, and I expected the manager to be at the end meeting me, and he was on the golf course. So, but nevertheless, different type management then. I mean, he was very thorough and obviously successful.
Not successful enough, though. With City struggling, he lost control of the dressing room and was allowed to resign in February. The board took charge of playing matters until the end of the season with predictable enough consequences. A more conventional approach may well have kept City up. Joe Mercer was one interviewee for the job, but it went to another, the former Aberdeen boss, David Halliday, who brought a decided Scottish accent to Filbert Street.
A lot of the players came on free transfers from Scotland. I think maybe at the time, then two-thirds of the staff were Scots at the time. You just never used to see the managers, you see. They bought and sold players and that side of it, but you never, on match days, they would just say their piece, not an awful lot, but they would say their bit and you would go out and play. I don't think maybe you wouldn't see them through the week.
And it's the second division league leaders, Swansea Town, kicking off in the white shirts and attacking the goal to our right.
In November 1955, BBC cameras, rather than the newsreels, recorded highlights of a match at Filbert Street for the first time and caught at least some of the 6-1 win over the Swans.
There's Hogg for Leicester. Hogg, number 11, starting a Leicester attack. Inside left, Arthur Rowley. Rowley, number 10 for Leicester in the dark shirt. And Rowley again for Leicester, going through and he shoots. And by when he converts it in there. It's a goal for Leicester. That goal was scored by the outside right Welsh international Mal Griffith. Here's Hogg back in the match again now. Hogg could win this match for Leicester, or make sure of it at least. They one goal up and Hogg racing through and trying to shot. And it's over the bar, and that's the kind of football Hogg's playing. Here's Leicester again, and again it's Derek Hogg turning the ball back across the goal, and it's turned aside. Here's Johnny Morris trying his shot, and it's just wide of the post. Well, Leicester's got the older team here. And here's Mal Griffiths racing through, and here's a goal! A goal there by Willie Gardner, the Leicester centre forward. Just 15 minutes gone in the second half, and that makes it Leicester 2, Swansea 0.
He was a very ungainly guy, tall, slim, and very awkward gait about him. And yet the ball used to go off the back of his head or back of his heels. I mean, always going to goal.
57,000 fans at White Hart Lane watch Leicester City in white shorts kick off against Tottenham Hotspur. The visitors try to move into the attack, but the Spurs defence break it up, and in less than no time, Leicester goalie Anderson is under fire. A goal-mouth tussle ends in George Robb being fouled. Tommy Harmer takes a penalty, and Anderson saves. Harmer lobs a free kick to Blanchflower. Anderson collects brilliantly, and the ball is over the line. Spurs are 1 up. Now a free kick for Leicester, but Ted Ditchburn stops it and stops Arthur Rowley too. Spurs are determined, and they're soon back again for a real goal-mouth dogfight, which gives Robb his chance to make it 2-0. So, after the most thrilling cup tie of the third round, it's Spurs to meet Chelsea in round 4.
That cup defeat was but a blip in 56-7. There were only 6 league losses to add to it, as City shattered almost every club record for scoring and points en route to the Second Division Championship. As euphoria turned to anxiety as soon as the First Division adventure resumed, there was a nagging fear that the mid-50s yo-yo effect had become institutionalised. Was it too much to ask for just a modicum of consistency from the boys in blue? The city of Leicester was now a prosperous exemplar of the never-had-it-so-good years, far more immune to economic fluctuations than its football team was to sporting ups and downs.
Leicester has opened the first supermarket where you can very nearly drive up to the counter. It's got everything, and every brand from A to X.
Midnight oil was burning as the last signs of post-war austerity disappeared, and Filbert Street was about to add to the nocturnal illumination with its own floodlights. Not all the facilities were so up to the minute, though.
A lot of the training was done just around the track, sprinting up and down the sides. And then, if we wanted a game, they didn't usually let us play on the park. We had to go out onto the car park, the big rough surface car park. And I think there was more injuries done there than there was on the park.
Matt Gillies had now risen from player to coach to manager and was charged with keeping City in the top flight. The goal scoring of Jimmy Walsh helped achieve a second successive very narrow escape from the drop. Yet it was at the other end of the pitch that Gillies was soon strengthening his squad.
I had a shock when I found out there was 5 professional goalkeepers on the books, and I didn't even know the 5 goalkeepers until it was press day, the week before the first game of the season, because we all trained in the same kit. You see, when I saw all these green shirts, I thought Leicester played in green.
Gordon was a tubby guy when he joined the club. People maybe call it ambitious, and other people might call it enthusiastic or whatever, but he was always at the ground. He was always getting people to take shots at him, and he worked at his game and benefited.
Bert Johnson arrived as chief scout, and soon he became Gillies' tactical right-hand man. As City struggled to make a very positive impact on Division 1, the manager turned to youth in an attempt to instigate a revival in the fortunes.
From him taking over, come the Easter, they were in trouble, and he introduced McClintock, King and Appleton as the half-back line. And we stayed up, and the next 5 seasons was 2 Wembleys and a League Cup final.
The first Wembley trail of the 60s threatened to derail before it had begun when Richie Norman opened the scoring for Bristol City with another own goal.
There was 42,000 in Filbert Street, and everything went quiet. I could hear a pin drop, and I looked around to see, hard luck, Rich, bad luck, and everybody put their heads down to the ground. And I walked back in silence to the halfway line. 1-0, bit of a shock on here, but it didn't happen. We beat them 5-1 in the end, and the papers the next day said Richie Norman started a goal riot. So I got away with that one.
Jimmy Walsh left was beaten in the toss by Barnsley skipper Sharp, and the 40,000 crowd packing the Oakville ground saw Leicester City kick off. Leicester playing left to right in this scene. This was the 6th round replay, and how those Barnsley fans were hoping their heroes would humble the First Division aristocrats. Leicester had an early escape, but right back Len Chalmers managed to clear. The visitors had switching play to the other end. Riley scored for Leicester. Barnsley came storming back. Oliver equalized. Oliver tested Banks. This time the Leicester goalkeeper was equal to the occasion and had no difficulty in getting the ball away, had some loss to his dignity. Leicester began the second half hoping that class would tell. The Barnsley defence held out. The score still stood at 1-1, which was how it remained when the referee blew the whistle for time. But of course they had to play extra time. Leake scored, so Leicester City went into the semi-final.
Leicester City took the field at St Andrews for the second replay of the semi-final, Sheffield United in striped shirts. Neither side had scored in the 2 previous games. Both hoped that this evening they'd get back to their usual form. Leake was going through when Sheffield goalkeeper Hodgkinson grabbed his foot. Penalty. Hodgkinson saved King's shot. As the Leicester forwards couldn't score, their right-back Chalmers took a shot. Only Hodgkinson's brilliance kept the ball out. No score at half-time. Then the game sprang into dramatic life. The ball went to the Leicester right wing. Howard Riley had it. He tried a shot. Hodgkinson only partly cleared, and Walsh banged it home. A After 257 goalless minutes, Leicester were 1 up. They scented victory and attacked again. Now Leicester centre-forward Ken Leake shot goal number 2. Already, Leicester City fans are saying, Spurs, look out.
Spurs would indeed have been looking out for Ken Leake, who'd scored in every round of the Cup. Sensationally, Gillies dropped him.
Ken liked to get out and about, and he liked a little drink, which a lot of the lads did anyway. But Ken, I think the manager had warned him a couple of times to steady down and all this.
Ken was a social guy. I can't see anything that should have influenced the decision of him playing.
If he was going to do that, Matt, he probably should have done it after the cup final. Let him play and do this and do that, because Ken was absolutely distraught and gutted not to play. Scored in every round and not to play in the final.
Getting to a final is one of the greatest things you can do, especially if you're with a club like Leicester City, because there's only one team in the whole city, and the whole city is behind you. And every window in the town is all lit up with blue and white and all that sort of stuff, you know. And it's marvellous getting there, but it's such a disaster if you get beat.
We went out there and we did not disgrace ourselves. We had Len Chalmers got injured after about half an hour, and of course there was no subs then. He really hobbled, and I mean hobbled on the right wing. So we were basically down to 10 men, and they really did have to work very, very hard to get the goals against us.
Spurs got there first, a brilliant effort by Bobby Smith. Spurs 1 up, and nothing was going to stop them now. A quarter of an hour before time, Smith centred, and Dyson made no mistake this time.
So Spurs took their historic double. Amazingly, that was an achievement Leicester themselves would aspire to only 2 years later under the captaincy of Colin Appleton.
Very little money spent in terms of buying quality. It was players that just wanted to prove themselves and play.
We were all together, all fighting for one another. Big hearts, which you need.
We were hard to beat. Nobody liked playing against us. You know, the results showed that.
The 63 side probably had reached its peak. That was the year that everybody was sort of playing really well.
One of the reasons for success was a tactical innovation introduced by Gillies and Johnson. What seems now a simple switching of positions utterly upset the certainties of the old 1-11 formation.
Frank and I, we had this new sort of shuttle system, which completely confused everybody. I don't know how it managed to, because all we did was just swap positions now and again. And everybody just didn't know what we were doing.
McClintock had a tendency to want to get forward because he's a very aggressive kind of player, and to accommodate him, we used Graham Cross as a kind of defensive player. Now this surprised them, because quite often I heard somebody on the opposition saying, "This is your man," meaning Graham Cross, who was number 8. And point of fact, McClintock was then his man, but they hadn't got round to thinking in terms of numbers then, and numbers didn't mean anything.
People remember me as a centre-half, but for nearly 10 years I was an attacking midfield player, bombing forward, try to score goals.
He scored some super goals and probably could say that he won his games.
The Cup run of 1963 and a consistent league form that saw City top the table for a while banished the shivers of an Ice Age winter and led to a semi-final encounter with Liverpool at Hillsborough.
Riley takes a free kick for Leicester. Up go the heads, and Mike Stringfellow has the ball in the net.
Tremendous cross of the ball, Howard Riley. I was lucky enough to get on the end and head it towards the goal, and it went in the corner. Perfect placing, actually.
And from that moment on, Liverpool just kept, it was like a wave after wave after wave.
They bombarded us. At the end, they were just lobbing balls in, hoping for everything. We were just saying, "Thank you very much, thank you very much."
Gordon Banks was supreme that day.
I remember the bus arriving at the station, at the Sheffield station, and the queue of people, the supporters, were waiting for their train, like, and they started applauding. It was great.
Well, we're second top of the league right up to the last few weeks of the season, so at one time we were going for the double.
But after the semi-final victory, things fell apart in the league, the impending trip to Wembley proving a real distraction for some.
Half the players either didn't want to play, or they wouldn't play, or they were so-called injured, you know, with a question mark. And we were hot favourites to win it. The BBC, I think, they all thought it was a foregone conclusion. And poor old Colin Appleton went to Wembley on the Friday afternoon, and the BBC sort of did a rehearsal of him receiving the cup, you know, which was didn't go down too well after we got stuffed 3-1.
Manchester only just escaped relegation, but as you look back at their side, I think they've got about 10 internationals, to be quite honest.
They were a team that were on the verge of doing great things. Unfortunately, they picked the cup final to start.
Manchester United, that galaxy of stars who have often disappointed, but who today believes their renowned manager, Matt Busby, on the right, will dazzle the football world.
I can remember I got through early in the game, came to this running, and there was a defender before him, so I'd got to get by the defender to let keepers slide in. I put it too hard, actually.
Leicester show their genius for turning defence into attack. United's tough left half, Morris Etters, almost gives Stringfellow a scoring chance.
We did everything the opposite to what we'd been done. That we used to close people down, not let them play. We stood off Man United of all teams, and they got all these individual stars, and of course they were stroking it, and we were letting them play and come at us, and it's what we hadn't done throughout all the years.
This looks more like the real Leicester City. Howard Riley has a try on the City right. At last, Leicester's persistence brings reward. City centre-forward Ken Keyworth scores. Tragically for Leicester, Banks fumbles. Ready to pounce on it is David Hurd. It's all over, the end of an exciting, very sporting game.
Any players probably playing in that season say, in a lot of ways, the highlights of their career, the best time that they ever had in football. In my case, it was. And also, it was probably the most disappointing.
Compensation, albeit in a lower key, came with a run to the final of the Football League Cup in 1964.
The League Cup wasn't as big as it is now. It wasn't played at Wembley. It was like a two-legged affair.
We drew at Stoke in the first leg and then won at Filbert Street.
Got an idea it was going to be a tight game because I knew Stoke were playing quite well in the second division. We weren't in the first, in the second.
They were a dour side in them days. You know. The ground was awful. It was just a sort of a slog. And I think both games were pretty much the same.
I would probably have been playing in a bit of a haze anyway, of the possibility of it all and being captain and all that.
To actually win something was great for the club, and when you win something it goes down in history and they can never take that away from you, so it was a great night.
City almost repeated their triumph a year later, losing the two-leg final to Chelsea. It had been a golden period under Gillies, respected by the players, a real gentleman.
He wasn't.
The cup run was quite weird, really, because we won most games 1-0. We went up to Liverpool and everybody expected us to get slaughtered, and we put up a brave defensive play, and I managed to save a penalty in front of the Kop from Tommy Smith, which was quite a brave thing to do, really, especially at, you know, being a youngster. And then we got the semi-final and played West Brom, and we scored 3 minutes from the end, and we felt our luck was in.
Leicester City, a good hard side. In fact, they've conceded only 13 goals in 20 games since Frank O'Farrell took over. Very hard, tight and efficient at the back in defence. That'll take a fair bit of breaking down. Lockhead. But there are 5 City players back, Manchester City players that is, and Lockhead is almost on his own right up. Here's Clark though, and Glover making a break, still Clark! Good save! From Clark by Dowd. And all the time Rodrigues is sneaking up on the right, but it's Roberts who's opening up in front of him, and now Gibson. Oh, what a chance! And what a battle! And Rodrigues, having sneaked up, was almost the man to pop it home. Summerby trying to elude Woolett. Young, it's there! Neil Young! Clark well up there, laying it off for Lockhead. Oh, very near. On the left of your picture there, Frank O'Farrell, Leicester manager. Next to him, Malcolm Musgrove, the coach. Two men with a fair bit on their mind, a number of problems too. Gibson with the corner, Lockhead going in and getting ahead to it. 6 inches lower, and that would have been the equaliser from Andy Lockhead.
No equaliser came, though, and the words Wembley and woe remained yoked together in Leicester eyes. As in 1949, there was no time for self-pity. A handful of league games remained in which City might save themselves from the drop.
We had to get to Manchester United, and we scored first. David scored first, but Bessie was on one of his better games that day and crucified us, and we lost, I think, 3-2 at the end.
O'Farrell's side really was too good for the second division, though it took 2 years to prove it. A frustrating near-miss in 1970 was followed a year later by the championship.
He sort of toughened up his midfield. He got a couple of little whippets in there. I think Willie Carlin and Bobby Kellard, two little strong dynamos in midfield.
Sjoberg getting there. John Sjoberg.
We didn't score a lot of goals, but God, we were mean at the back.
23 clean sheets. It's an unbelievable record. And, you know, we kept nudging the 1-0s, 2-0s, and we won fairly convincingly, I think, in the end that season.
Sjoberg coming in. And there by Partridge.
It was that spirit, you know, that we all wanted to get there and do it that really got us through more than probably that little bit of clash, you know.
Yesterday's result, which clinched the championship for us and got us promotion to the first division, has been a reward for all the hard work and dedication of everybody connected with the club, and we're all absolutely delighted.
On a personal note, some people are saying that you're likely to depart from Leicester and take over a job at Manchester United. What do you say about it?
Well, I read the papers, but I never make comments about comments in the paper. I'd rather not say anything about it at this particular time anyway, because as far as I'm concerned, they're only newspaper rumours.
Rumours, however, which were given credence by none other than Matt Busby himself.
The club and the board of directors are determined, probably in their own minds, it should be a figure, it should be a man that's got experience, it should be a man that's handled players in the situation. That doesn't necessarily mean first class. There's some great managers in the second division. I could tell you one or two myself. But,
can you name me one or two?
Well, I think this Frank O'Farrell's a very, very promising manager.
As O'Farrell walked into Old Trafford, the newly arrived Jimmy Bloomfield set out his own ambitions for his team's first season back.
I don't like that word consolidation because it means that you feel that you're not quite as good as the best, and I want Leicester to feel that they're as good as any side in the first division. But by saying that, I know that it's going to be a very difficult job to live up to that.
I don't think they played the sort of football he wanted. He wanted more of the pretty football type. Not everybody agreed with him, but we had a lot of success without that sort of football.
Jimmy came and completely revitalised Leicester from sort of a being boring side to a very, very flamboyant. The London boys came in.
This club was known as Leicester Thistle, really, because before Frank O'Farrell, around the Matt Gillies era, there's a lot of Aggies bashers, what I call them, the Scots players down here. There's still a lot around the city now. They never went back over Adrian's Wall. And then, of course, Jimmy came and he signed John Samuels, me, Keith Weller, Steve Earle, Dennis Rowe, and, of course, it became known as Leicester Cockney.
I signed for Leicester, really, because of Jimmy Bloomfield. And he bought people who were comfortable on the ball, and he first and foremost liked a player to have skill. And all the players he bought, I think, the Leicester supporters who saw that team would say that he bought skillful players.
He was ambitious and he wanted to create a team that could play, and we had a fairly successful period under Jimmy. We played some terrific football, some great football.
I don't think that we could have had a harder game to start off with, but it's just as well that you play a side like Liverpool so that we know exactly what the first division is about. And if we do really well against Liverpool, I'm hoping that it will be a good omen for the rest of the season.
Well, this is a Charity Shield match. It would be nice to win it and start off by winning something with your first match of the season, wouldn't it?
Well, it'd be a unique thing to do, I think.
I hope you do it.
Thank you very much indeed.
Sjoberg. Brown. Leicester looking lively. Farrington. Whitworth going up on the outside for him. Brown. Oh, and a good piece of play here as Whitworth comes in on the blind side. And Fern! No, yes! Whitworth! And the goal is given! And it's Steve Whitworth who puts it in. Well, he made a great run, Whitworth, all the way. By my reckoning, the first goal he scored in the first team.
All of a sudden, we've won the Charity Shield and we think we're going to have a good season, and I don't think we did.
Right on the goal line, and it's a goal in the first minute of the game. Looks like Alistair Brown, the scorer. Nicholson comes away, but a little too deliberate. Nish gets it to Fern. Fern for Nish, a shot, a chip. It's there! Beautiful second goal by the Leicester City skipper, David Nish. Taylor misjumping there, and a goal by Cross. Cross has equalised. And that's a good ball from Nish to Brown. Birchenall, and he scored. And that's a better ball for Fern. Back to Cross. Glover, and he's got it. That was a fine goal by Leicester. That one hitting Cooper, and Birchenall high in the air, straight watching it just in case. And it nearly did creep on the bar. Jones, it's a goal by Brown. Glover's cross.
Bloomfield's side stayed up without having to rely on too many howlers like those, but he really needed the cutting edge of a proven goalscorer.
It's there! Worthington the scorer!
Huddersfield's Frank Worthington fitted the bill, but he wouldn't be easy to capture or apparently easy to tame.
Whereas Leicester come in with about 120 grand, I think Liverpool came in with about 150 grand. It's a week's wages now, isn't it? But it was then, it was a British transfer record fee.
Jimmy Bloomfield was in a bidding war with Bill Shankly for Frank, and he only got his man after Liverpool balked at Worthington's lifestyle.
There was only ever 2 or 3 wives or girlfriends in this little piddly room we used to have for a players' lounge. And Frank comes in, and if you can picture it, first of all, the tightest denim jeans you've ever seen in your life, and I mean tight, I'll leave the rest of the imagination, knee-length boots, big buckle belt with Elvis across, black T-shirt with glitter with Elvis across the black T-shirt, and a black velvet jacket with little rosebuds all over it, and a Stetson.
Whatever Elvis wore, I wore. And then Alan Woollett and Mike Stringfellow would follow. I'm joking, Will.
The next home game we played, the players' room was rammed. Every player's wife that could get in there was in there to see Frank. He was a character. He was an unbelievable fella, you know. But what a great player.
Oh, that's there. That's a fine goal from Worthington. Given back to Leicester by Gemmell. Here's Worthington with a chance. Yes. Well taken, Worthington.
Knock it up to Frank, and it was up to him whether he gave it back to you. You could keep it for a couple of days. Used to drive John Samuels balmy.
Worthington, beautifully done. Takes on England again. Check.
We knew Frank was going to do his own thing because he was so skillful and scored his fair share of goals.
But terrific ability. His right foot probably wasn't anywhere near his left, but his left foot was a bit special.
You don't see too many left-footed players about, and they seem to ooze with class. If he had a bit more pace, he would have been the ultimate.
All they've got to do is give me the ball. And then, you know, you just do the rest with your own instincts, with your own abilities, your own you know, style of play. And Lenny Glover on the left-hand side and myself, we developed this telepathic understanding. And Glover was electric.
That was Worthington, and here's Glover. Oh, yes! What a fine goal.
Here's John Samuels. That's a good shot.
He wanted an attractive team. He wanted people to look at his team and say, well, win, lose or draw, if they came and see the team play, they thought, well, I've been entertained.
We played adventurous, flowing football, and the fans loved it.
A number of times we played away, and the visiting supporters would come up to us, and whatever the result was, they would say, you know, you're the team we've enjoyed most watching at our ground this year.
It was a brilliantly gifted, entertaining football team.
We sort of couldn't be in the lead 1-0 and shut the game down and whatever, you know, we just kept going forward. And of course, at times you pay for that.
And Samuels makes it 3! What a beautiful goal for Leicester!
Other than having a great football team to play in, the characters in the dressing room, you know, the place was alive every morning when you went in there. There was always a buzz, and you know, there was always something going on, and behind it all was the one and only Birchingham.
Hold on, don't let me turn sideways.
I never finished a game in all my time without a laugh at somebody. It was serious to me, but I think it was important. You know, I love the game. And during a game, if I didn't have a laugh with a spectator, it was the opposition or a referee, and that's what that period was all about.
There was a fine spirit amongst the Bloomfield boys that often expressed itself on the pitch, but they were actually done few favours by Filbert Street itself.
For many years the pitch was really bad and it didn't really suit us, you know, especially the double-decker end. It got very, very heavy, and it was like, we had a point where it was like a beach, you know, the pitch was that heavily sanded.
Cue the innovation of the tent, an inflated and heated pitch cover to keep out the worst of the weather. That was the theory anyway.
We used to train under that, but the thing was always getting ripped, you know. Well, it used to be all round the side of Filbert Street, you see, but it was never rolled up properly. And in them days, we used to do sprint work down the track. Of course, we had spikes, proper running spikes for the sprint work, and we were running over half of this tent. Of course, we were puncturing it with the spikes.
Stringfellow, Worthington, Stringfellow!
City.
I think they have played attacking football and good attractive football, but not consistently. And I've said in the press before that Jimmy Bloomfield must have pulled his hair out a few times, seen him playing fantastic one week and the following week slumping down quite low. So my aim is to try and achieve a better consistency and hope that they can reach a higher standard, or at least a more level standard than what they've had in the past. I think the biggest job of a manager is to get his players playing for him, to get a good sound system of playing, and to have players want to go out there and run through a brick wall for him almost. And not many managers achieve this.
And this will be Andy King's second goal of the game, and that makes it 5-1.
I think it was his first taste of management. So taking over a Premier League team as your first management job, you know, maybe found it a little bit too much, and he didn't quite get it right.
Worthington was not the only favourite jettisoned by McClintock. He was certainly one of several not to be suitably replaced. Eyebrows were being raised by a purchasing policy that seemed to be bordering on panic buying.
I'm collecting players at the moment. Well, there's no doubt that team had to be broken up, but I think perhaps Frank, in hindsight, would have wished he'd just broken up a little bit slower.
I would like to make Leicester a very good side, and I want to do it quickly. I mean, I'm hoping very much that I will be able to do it, but it can't come quick enough for me.
Maybe Frank would have been better sticking with the team that had done reasonably well the previous year. I don't think that team would have been relegated.
That's looking for Hughes. Nod down for Williams! Yeah! Greeted like the winner in a cup final.
Only 2 wins had been gained in 28 games at that point, and only 3 more would follow, the last coming after McClintock had resigned.
I just think it's a bit sad that he's remembered sometimes as the manager that took Leicester City down in his first year as a manager, and not as the great Leicester City player he was in the 60s.
City were hunting for a new boss, and the advert for a successor attracted one unusual applicant.
I've had 2 years' experience with a youth side. It isn't professional, no, but I've had the experience and I've taken them to the top of the league, and I feel that being female, the players can discuss their problems with you, football and other problems, much more easily, and I think they'd find in me a much more understanding manager.
I quite like the idea personally of working with a woman as a manager for the first time in my life. I think I've worked with many other kinds of people, and I thought this would be interesting. But unfortunately, Mrs. Brooks doesn't have any Football League experience, which is obviously essential to this particular position. And so it was on that basis that we had to unfortunately say no.
But the appointments City actually made seemed even more unlikely. Jock Wallace being tempted south from Scottish treble winners Rangers.
Well, it's wet and it's miserable on the day that Leicester City's footballers have been dreading for weeks, because this is the day that they have to tackle this, the hill. Indeed, one of 3 hills just outside Leicester that their new manager, Jock Wallace, has selected for some very special training.
On, Crocodile. Hands off that bloody sand. Come on.
Keep your hands off your sand and away up. And fish all the way. Fish all the way. Come on, Joe. Fish. The players say you're an impressive guy, but they've never really trained like this before, they say.
Well, that's their problem, eh?
But this is obviously something you believe in, Jock.
Well, I believe a man's superbly fit. It just depends on ability and form then. So we're cut down all the time. If you're fit, then your morale's good, your mental attitude's good, and they are in good morale and they're in good fitness at the moment.
Jock Wallace has just announced you've got to do it all again.
Yeah, terrific. Huh? It's all right for him staying out of the fast line.
You think you can manage it again?
Yeah, let's do it.
Come on! Go on, Dennis. Go on, Dennis. Keep your hands off the sand.
Jock was terrifying in many ways. Great motivator and a great man.
Very loud. Very loud, and you had to more or less lip read because you couldn't understand what he was saying. I used to hate it when he used to ring down to the laundress if he wanted anybody, because I couldn't understand what he said.
I think his man management was terrific. I wouldn't describe him as tactically the best in the world after he was a goalie, for crying out loud. But he was, you know, his organisation was basic. He got the team to run.
Chase and run and pass and run. And it was exciting to watch, I thought.
Christie up and scores. Trevor Christie. First goal that the Leicester fans have had to cheer for their side here this season. It's for Henderson. Early ball in. It was a good one too. Williams. Buchanan. And stab back for Peake. Yes. Andy Peake. Williams has beaten the offside trap. He's all right. He's okay. And Buchanan rams in the second goal. Nothing wrong with that one. Good win. Good ball. Smith, they're putting it together, and there's Buchanan with the first goal of the game. No doubt about that. Dave Buchanan. And May's coming across and scores! Weller. Henderson. On for Weller. Peake's in the middle. So is Buchanan. It's got to be pulled back now. Weller might go. Oh, it does! Oh, that's a brilliant goal!
The only reason Wells wore them tights that day was on the morning of the game, his wife went to get the shopping out the back of the car, and they were on the back seat. And his wife, Terry, says, "What the hell are these tights doing here?" And quick as a flash, Wells said, "Oh, I'm wearing them this afternoon in the game." So you'll have to draw your own judgment to that, why he wore the white tights.
Look at that. It's ballet on ice, isn't it?
You have to be a good player. You have to be a great player to get away with wearing white tights.
And here's Buchanan, if you can switch it. Henderson is unmarked. Can he get there, Henderson? Yes, he can!
Wallace put his faith in youth and within 2 years was on the verge of promotion. The penultimate game was at home to Charlton.
And here goes Young. Good goal! Wow, that's the first real attack that Leicester have had, and they've scored. O'Neill got the touch, and Smith scores the goal.
celebrations are going to start here early. Mathematically, it isn't over yet. But the crowd think it is. They're pretty damn certain that Leicester are back in the First Division.
A week later, and a win at Orient secured for City their 6th championship. And back in Leicester, it prompted a fantastic reception.
Fantastic. It's a long time since I've won anything. And these supporters here deserve it, as well as the manager and all the team. And it's one of the best, most happiest club I've been with.
Predict what's going to happen this time next year.
Well, I don't know. We've just got to wait and see.
We'll win a championship next year. I'm looking to win it. I'm not looking to survive. We didn't come back and talk about survival last year. We talked about winning the league, and that's what I'm doing now.
Is that really realistic, your first season up in Division 1?
You asked me a question, I gave you an answer.
For our third game tonight, we have Leicester City against Liverpool. Leicester, a young side, average aged 21, in fact, with 2 defeats from their first 2 games. Against Liverpool, well, we all know about Liverpool.
And Leicester, let's look back and reckon that they've made more chances than Liverpool. They're still scoreless. Goes Big, setting himself for the drive. Oh, what a goal! That is beautiful! Andy Peake, his first ever First Division goal. He'll never score a better one. And he's beat one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world from what? 30 yards. And there's the goal from Henderson. 2-0. Out of nothing down the park.
I remember him saying here that this team will win the championship, and we all cringed a wee bit, because, to be honest, we didn't quite think they was that good. I mean, I didn't think we'd go back down, which we did.
Henderson to Wilson, a good ball. Lineker coming round the back. Gary Lineker's first ever goal in the First Division, and he couldn't have timed it better.
And the header in. Well, what a good goal. The scorer is Alan Young, his first goal of the season in the league. Absolutely delighted with that.
And now Brazil for Ipswich. Only Mariner forwards. Oh, and turned in by Tommy Williams.
I stupidly said we won the league at the start of the season. I've since had my fingers burnt, but if we survive this year, then we'll take a bit of beating next year. Whichever happens, we'll take a bit of beating, because they've learned a hell of a lot this year.
Yes, unfortunately got the table the wrong way around on that prediction, Jack, didn't he?
Yeah, well, might be a devil this year. It was good last year, you know what I mean?
By February, with City now involved in a real relegation scrap, Wallace made genuine attempts to capture the Dutch superstar Johan Cruyff to inspire his young team. But the only actual addition that month was winger Steve Lynex.
And is it going in? Lynex has put it in, and it counts. It's 2-2.
By the final fixture at Norwich, they were already doomed, but Jimmy Melrose at least assured a last-day knees up.
And Melrose is in with a chance. It's going in. It's a hat-trick.
There was a general consensus that Wallace's team had in fact gone up a year too early, and that relegation would help mature some of the youngsters. This was certainly the case for Gary Lineker, so far only a fringe player.
First 2 or 3 years, he only stayed in the club more or less by the skin of his teeth, if you like. He wasn't the best at trapping the ball. He probably wasn't the best tactically in those days. He had got 2 great assets. Well, first was pace, and second was a knack of scoring goals when he was in the right place. And each time, you know, when Jock was doing the retain list for the first couple of years, that'd be 80 and 81, you know, he'd come to Lineker and whatever, but the lad can run, he can score. Yeah, we'll offer him another contract. And then a couple of years later, of course, it wasn't quite like that.
He said, "You've got to grow, laddie." So he put me on this diet of various substances, milk and steak, actually, which probably were not the best thing to have.
Would Gary have made it at another club? I don't know. I mean, Lineker was one of the very few players, I've worked in football for 50 years, who improved year by year by year. Probably with some help by coaches, but you've got to have your own determination to do that, and that's where I think so many players probably don't. You know, you reach a level and that's fine. But Gary always wanted to take a step more and made himself take that step more.
Ball in for Lineker, and he equalises. Gary Lineker. Ian Wilson. Larry May up, this drops then. Oh yes! Superb goal!
Lineker really put that one away. Wilson now, and O'Neill forward. And there goes Lineker again. He's in for another try. And he's put that one away.
At the other end of the pitch, the focus fell on the skipper, Mark Wallington, who proved himself a worthy successor to Banks and Shilton.
McCulloch is there. Taylor! Oh, great save by Wallington.
I think he's in one of the top 6 goalkeepers in the country. I wish I had got Mark Wallington when he was about 18, 19. I think I could have developed him into a tremendous international class goalkeeper.
Oh, Williams, and a great save by Wallington.
One of the great characters in football, he used to do this thing where he, put it on the 6-yard box and for his goal kicks, run back and put his hand on the net and then pretend he got stuck with the net. And stupid things like the crowd had thrown the ball and he'd pretend to catch it and do that thing where he hit it on the biceps and bounce it back to them. And he was ever the joker and had a little laugh.
The old saying about keepers is you've got to be daft to be one. I wonder if you can confirm that.
From my own experience, I'd probably say yes. Yeah.
Wallington's consistency was legendary. By now, partway through 1981-82, he hadn't missed a game in over 6 seasons.
Cross for width on the far post, knocked back for Shaw, and another marvellous save, and again, how did he keep that out?
Thought, well, where does that leave me, but Gordon Milne came in, and it was perfect, really, because he got rid of Alan Young, the existing centre-forward, and he promoted me. I scored a hat-trick in a pre-season friendly, and I was straight in from the start.
He's a big target man, and for his size, he's got a great first touch. I think this is probably his biggest asset.
I think we do combine well together because I tend to be, the ball played up to me, I hold it, and Gary runs off, and as he says, I have won quite a few balls in the air to knock onto him, and he uses his speed, and that's one of his main strengths, his speed.
They were both similar personalities, studious, prepared to listen, prepared to learn and wanted to be better, wanted to improve themselves. They developed into a twosome that was as good as anything in the league.
The turning point of City's first season under Milne, though, was the loan signing of Coventry midfielder Jerry Daly.
I think we were about 10th. We just lost to Grimsby, I can remember that. I remember the coach trip back, which was a bit miserable. And if someone had told you then that we were going to get promoted and wouldn't lose another match, they wouldn't have believed you. But that's what happened.
Something clicked at that particular time, and away we went, and came from, no hopers, really, to being right in the frame.
Now Smith, good ball through to Lynex. Lovely goal from Steve Lynex, who really thundered that one past John Burridge. Goes Alan Smith, Lineker, him off Dodd. Only half cleared. Oh, what a goal from Alan Smith! What a goal that was! 1-1 for Smith and Lineker now. Wilson, cross in for Smith. Lynex! Poor John Burridge couldn't keep it out. Now Lynex picking up a splendid pass then from Bobby Smith. Still Lynex. Lineker. It's gone in off the post. Well, you can't say that Gary Lineker doesn't deserve a goal. Daly finding Lineker, pinpoint pass. Lineker again prepared to take on Dodd. Beaten him too. Daly! Magnificent finish by Jerry Daly. First time into the far corner. And that is clean a piece of finishing, as you'll see.
Fulham, Leicester and Leeds are shaping up for a real set too in the closing weeks to see who joins those apparent certainties, Queen's Park Rangers and Wolves, in the First Division next season.
Smith and Lineker. And now Wilson.
And he scored for Leicester. Got to the end of the season, last game, and they were at Derby. We were at home to Burnley, and it was a packed house, 30,000, and a bit of a dull 0-0, really.
4 minutes of injury time, and there goes the final whistle. The crowds rush onto the field, off go the players. It's 0-0 here. And is it enough to take Leicester back into the First Division after a 2-year absence?
At the end of the match, we heard that the result at the baseball ground had gone in our favour. It meant that we'd got promotion. So we came back out up onto the director's box balcony and saluting to the fans, you know, they were all on the pitch. But then the next thing we knew, there'd been an appeal by Fulham because the referee had stopped the match at Derby 2 minutes early because the fans had invaded the pitch, so that put the old champagne on ice a bit.
The league announced that the result would stand, but you can always appeal against that to the FA. So although we were nearly there, we weren't quite there. And then I remember the phone rang on my desk and direct line, picked it up, Alan Bennett. Malcolm MacDonald here at Fulham. Look, Alan, I want you people at Leicester to be the first to know that we're not going to appeal. All the best in the First Division. You put the phone down.
So, promotion by a point. Then Milne's side showed surprising stickability in the top division.
You've got to try and give the fans hope. You know, I think we did that. I think, you know, there was something there for them to go and look at. And, you know, Gary, Allen, the combination of players. We'd players there that gave them hope, and there was players there also that would give them 100%.
Oh, I say, what a cracking goal! And there's Peak! Oh, I say, he's done it again! Comes to Lineker, that's good play! And he got it through Sherwood. Smith's header, Alan Smith, and he scores.
But with average attendances only around the 15,000 mark, money was tight. Kevin MacDonald had to be sold to Liverpool to cut the club's overdraft. But the departure for Everton of local hero Lineker was for different reasons.
It was hard leaving, it wasn't easy. You know, I hummed and hard, and it was the easiest thing in the world to stay. You know, because I loved the team, and it was the toughest decision in football I've had to make, but, you know, I was ambitious.
There must be a point where they think to themselves, look, I'm not going to win the league here. I'm not going to play in Europe here. And I'm good enough. I know I'm good enough. So the best player will nearly always want to move on.
Moving in during 1986 was new team manager Brian Hamilton. Moving upstairs was Gordon Milne.
It was my own choice, really, and you can't be at a club too long as a coach. Brian's a bubbly character, still is, and it was full of confidence and had a different approach to training and you know, had a reputation of being a motivator and getting players at it, which, you know, maybe was felt that was needed at that particular time.
Anything to do with the team is to do with me, so we got to do well or else I'm in trouble.
Venus left it, McAllister. That's a very good goal. Scored by Gary McAllister. Here's Osman this time, and it's got in. 2-0 to Leicester.
As I've just said to the lads, 10 out of 10, but that's only the start. From there, we bounce and we make Saturday another big day for us.
Too many Saturdays, though, like this one at Everton, ended in disappointment, and again the club were unable to hold on to their star player. Top scorer Alan Smith was sold to Arsenal, yet immediately loaned back.
I think the agreement is that I stay here and try and do my bit to help Leicester avoid relegation. If we avoid it before the end of the season, then, well, maybe I'll go to Arsenal then.
He was quite happy to go along with it. I can think of quite a lot of players who must have said, you must be joking, you know. And he came back here, and there's another quiz question, isn't it? What Arsenal player made his debut at Highbury against Arsenal? Well, it is Alan Smith.
I just remember warming up and that, and both sets of fans were singing my name. So I was waving there, waving there. Gary McAllister gave me a bit of a rollicking, you know, get your mind on the job, Alan, you know, you're playing for Leicester today. And I mean, I did. I didn't give less than 100%, but we got hammered 4-1 or something like that.
Well, despite his best efforts, they were once more waving farewell to the first as they applauded their fans at Oxford. It was no surprise that newly sponsored City were deemed to be facing their crunch time in 1987. But as Hamilton's team continued to slide, it was he who would be doing the walking.
When people
like Walker's throw their weight behind Leicester City Football Club. They're looking for something back, which is quite right. And let's hope that we can give them the success on the park and also maybe show the shirts at Wembley, which would be really nice.
Thank you, mate. Got a big one. There we go.
David, I'm sure
A Christmas Eve press conference brought an early festive present. The former Spurs manager David Pleat, unveiled as the new City boss.
Well, it's a strange Christmas because I haven't been doing anything apart from watching football with an unbiased approach for several weeks now. Yes, it's a happy Christmas. Points make you happy.
Folk raise an eyebrow when they say, how'd you get on with David Pleat? I like him. I liked him as a person. Strange character at times, you know, but knowledge very, very good. Tactician, very, very good. Man management, questionable, but, you know, all managers have got certain strengths and weaknesses.
The next 4 months he was absolutely exceptional. The team just rose up the table, and by the end of the season we were the best team in the second division. There's no question of it. No danger of being promoted because we were too far back. But the last game we went to Middlesbrough, who were going to be champions. The whole place was stacked out with champagne. And we won comfortably. I mean, we played them off the park. So we were looking very much forward to the next following season when I think everybody in England thought Leicester City was a search, so we were going to accompany them. They had nowhere to go. It's just inexplicable.
We had a talented group of individuals. It's just that we couldn't gel as a team and put, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games together where you don't necessarily win the 10 games, but you certainly don't. You learn not to lose. And performances again were indifferent.
The turnover of players under Pleat was quite considerable. Forwards Yari Rantanen, the mighty Finn, and record by Mike Newell, later to Horn City, were two of the numerous faces to disappear from the lineup.
I think David's style of training was always fascinating because he would study videos and, you know, he had a wealth of knowledge in that, and he brought gurus into the club, and he would do the Brazilian warm-up where you were skipping and clapping your hands under your legs and technique when you were running and that, and the lads used to look at each other because it was strange. And then he would bring a guru in and, you know, try to tell us how to walk properly and get out your chair properly and how to change the channel in your TV properly, and, you know, it was all fascinating stuff, and I dare say there's method behind the madness.
Soccerina is a bit like a cross between soccer and squash and is played in an inflated court. Players have to hit the white target area and keep the ball in play.
I felt that we could devise something, provided I got the help of 1 or 2 friends, that would make a very efficient game for skill training. I mean, this is a super game for adjustment of the feet, quickness of mind, quickness of thought, and it can be played from 6 years old to 60-year-olds, depending on your level of fitness.
Inconsistency was now almost institutionalised. Pleat's team could go down 5-4 at Newcastle one season and beat the same side by the same score the next. It led to a growing campaign for managerial and boardroom change that even took to the skies, and the Pleat out, Shipman out lobby were finally satisfied after a home defeat by Blackburn in January 1991.
it's a pity one game makes a big difference. On Saturday we lost. If we'd have won on Saturday, I don't think I'd be talking to you now. It's as silly as that, isn't it?
I can only say one thing. I've done the job as best I can within the directives or constraints or whatever the word is of the club.
We all knew how hard it worked and how near it had been, but it hadn't happened. So we had to make the change, and they asked Gordon Lee to take over for the rest of that season. And I think he got Ali Mocklin to act as his coach from memory as well as playing.
Not the most gifted tactical man in the world. He's from the old school, his old Jock Wallace school, where he believed in man management and motivation to win games, and that's what got us through that difficult period. He got people to believe in themselves again, and he was a very likeable guy.
There was indeed a revival under Lee, but the trapdoor to the third division was still gaping as City prepared to meet Oxford on the day of the Great Escape.
We've been going downhill the last 3 or 4 years, and 3 or 4 years very badly.
And to some extent, you know, where we sit tomorrow morning is the culmination of that. We've got to do something about that. And we should be, it doesn't matter whether we finish 22nd or 23rd tomorrow, there'll be a radical rethink about where we go, how we do it, what we're doing correctly and what we are not doing correctly.
Well, thankfully for City, the changes would take place at second division level. Defender Tony James's close-range goal securing survival. There was no way back for stopgap hero Gordon Lee. The new chairman, Martin George, first hit on Cambridge's John Beck as a potential new boss. But instead he chose a man who'd masterminded Darlington's rise from the Conference to the old third division with 2 successive promotion campaigns, Brian Little.
The whole place changed. I mean, it was incredible. Within, I wouldn't say with despair because we got away with it, but that low feeling within weeks had changed to optimism. And you've got to give Brian a hell of a lot of credit for that.
One of the things I did on arriving here was take home the video of the year that just had, you know, the survival as it was, because it was a survival. And quite honestly, I never watched it all, because so far through it I thought, hang on a sec, this is probably harder than I thought. They gave some terrible goals away. But having said that, you know, one of the things that I'd introduced at Darlington was not so much a flamboyant side, but a side that were difficult to beat. And I knew that, having watched halfway through this video, that was what I had to do at Leicester. And it was something that was a bit of a trouble for me for my initial few months, because 1 or 2 people used to write letters to me all the time saying, we're not playing good football, you know, you're not doing it the way we should be doing it, then this isn't how Leicester play. And I had to overcome that early doors, but...
Did you not write back and say, yeah, but we're winning?
No, I used to go and knock on the door. I was a bit fiery in those days.
Brian wanted his own team, and he brought with him Alan Evans and John Gregory. I think that's the best management team I've ever worked with. I wouldn't say Brian was the best manager. I wouldn't say Alan Evans or John Gregory were the best at their particular fields. But as a team, they were definitely the best.
I used to do the scouting for my clubs at Middlesbrough and when I was a youth coach at Villa before that. And it was quite easy for me to find players that I felt would fit in, and we very quickly established a 3-man central defence. You know, we played with and wing backs. Gary Mills really loved raiding up and down the right-hand side. We got a great deal out of Gary. But Walshy was very much the stalwart of it all. Tommy Wright scored goals with the freedom we gave him. So I think changing the system, changing the mentality, got the best out of some of the players who were here.
At one stage, the best looked likely to carry City to automatic promotion in 1992, after victories over promotion rivals Blackburn and then Cambridge. But a couple of severe hiccups at the end of the season, first at Charlton and then this topsy-turvy defeat by Newcastle, meant they'd have to contest the playoffs for the first time ever.
Walsh's header. Thompson, that's careless, and this is Peacock, and it's 1-0 to Newcastle. Gavin Peacock. Less than 5 minutes to go. It's a big throw. Walsh is up there. Newcastle haven't got it clear. And Walsh again. Oh, it's an equaliser. 1-1. Disaster for Kevin Keegan. Into stoppage time now. That's a huge kick from Wright. Walsh, the goal scorer, is there. Oh, can you believe it?
A final placing of 4th. Ironically, the 2-leg semi-finals opposed Beck's Cambridge and Little's City.
So once again, there are problems here for Cambridge with Mike Whitlow on the ball. James and Walsh coming in. It's taken short to Steve Thompson. It's a good chip. And here comes Russell. Great goal. Leicester take the lead. In swinging corner, Dion Dublin moving towards the near post. Up goes Chappell and Heathcote. It's a good one. And there's Danny O'Shea got the last touch.
The Cambridge game, the playoff semi-final, is obviously in the top 10. It might even be the... I mean, I have to say this. It might even be my favourite game of all time. As a manager, it was just so good. My team played to their absolute maximum. Cambridge had beaten us 5-1 earlier in the season at their place, and we got really booed off the park. And yet we'd made unbelievable strides, absolutely hammered them, played out of our skin, scored some great goals, and we're going to Wembley for what I believe now is probably the biggest prize in English football.
The prize would be entry to the newly instituted Premiership, and the first visit to Wembley in 23 years brought a predictable response from the fans. The City ticket allocations selling out instantly.
We'd actually done quite well against Blackburn in the league that year. There was no reason why we shouldn't have done it. But they had all the things in their favour, you know, big game, big name players who probably could play on a big stage.
Sellers is in the middle. Speedy's got past Walsh. Has he? Penalty. George Courtney had no hesitation. David Speedy, in the last minute of the first half, has run a penalty for Blackburn Rovers. Mike Newell against Carl Muggleton. They're on the way! Applause from the manager. Delight for the players.
There's a saying in football, you do whatever it takes to win a football match. You know, and David Speedy did what he could to win a football match as a professional football player.
But the back heel couldn't be picked up by Price. It gives Leicester the chance to break forward again. Grayson getting it forward towards Joachim. Again he's turned Simons well, and suddenly Portsmouth are in trouble again as Joachim goes through. A fabulous finish for Leicester.
A year later it was playoff time again. Joachim's first leg winner, the decisive edge between the two sides.
Here's Thompson. Joachim alongside him. Still with Thompson. It's a great goal. And that might well settle it.
Blackburn, we weren't putting any money on it. Swindon, we thought we'd win. No question about it.
It was a great game of football. It was one of those classic Wembley final type of things which people talk about. For all, it's a great game to be involved in. I don't think I've ever been as gutted after a game as I was then. I mean, it just completely knocked the stuffing out of me, and it was awful.
They've gone from left to right flank. Summerby whips it into Maskell. Well played. Hoddle. On it goes to Maskell. He's onside. He has Mitchell in the box, otherwise it's full of Leicester defenders. So he goes outside the box to Moncur. Good run by him, and now Maskell! And he goes high towards Taylor. Walsh got there ahead of him though. Moncur plays it back in again, and no offside! And Taylor has scored! And that surely means it's the Premier League for Swindon Town now! Whitlow has Philpott hugging the left touchline. And Oldfield gets it back to him. That's a good ball. Philpott's cross is an excellent one. Walsh is there! And Joachim buries the rebound! Leicester have a moment of hope. And still Mills, and still. And he curls it beautifully over to the far post. Philpott turning it back in again. Walsh goes up to the keeper, and it's in! 3-2! Now Walsh, what a hero he's been, a part in both the goals, scored the second of course. Whitlow drives forward now. He's got Joachim and looks for Thompson, and Thompson has equalised! It's unbelievable stuff now! Knocks it long for White, and White steals in and goes down, and it's a penalty! The referee has given a penalty for a foul on the substitute. Paul Bodin from the spot for Swindon. He scored! It's all over! A Wembley classic has ended with victory for Glenn Hoddle and a place in the Premier League for Swindon Town. You can only feel deeply, deeply sorry for Leicester City. For the second time in 12 months, they've tasted defeat. For the 6th time in their history, they've come to Wembley, and they will go home losers.
If we'd been 3 up and lost 4-3, everybody would have been chucking seats at us, you know. But the fact that we were 3 down and come back, and then, you know, we're just completely devastated. It was a penalty, wasn't it, at the end? I think, I hate that game. I hate thinking about it, to be honest, you know.
Was Brian under pressure at that point?
No, he was never under pressure at the club. He might have been under pressure from himself, because he set very high standards.
With a new main stand going up, City were now desperate to reach the Premier League to help fill it. Little's key move in this summer's recruitment was a controversial one. David Speedy was now a City player.
Just glad to be here and hope they'll be cheering for me instead of booing at me.
I could see Speedo winning us a game, the game, whether it be the final, whether it be a game that took us automatic promotion. I could see him doing it, and I genuinely felt he did. And people might say to me, well, what game was that? And I would say it's the semi-final. It was the semi-final he influenced so much but got sent off. But he got sent off in. But to be honest with you, him being sent off was the best thing for me for the final. The fact that I didn't have to play him in the final was the best thing ever, because he'd done his bit for us. He'd got us there.
Speedy will claim it. It doesn't matter who got the final touch. What does matter is that could be the goal that takes Leicester City back to Wembley.
We didn't pick the team until the morning of the game. But Walsh said in an interview I've seen that he looked around at some of the lads and thought, what's he doing? Why has he picked this team? Colin Gibson played, who hadn't been a regular in the side. But I'd picked a team that I felt Derby wouldn't enjoy playing against. That's what I had to do. That's what I felt I had to do.
Johnson falls onto it brilliantly. Oh, it's a superb goal! Tommy Johnson gives Derby the lead. Blake for Leicester. Coatsworth, that's a dangerous ball, that. And the keeper's beaten to it by Walsh. It's gone in! Steve Walsh! Leicester on level! Race. Thompson. Walsh. Good ball back into Jochen. Bit of magic from him, perhaps. It's a good ball. Race. And it goes towards... Oh, brilliant save in there! Walsh has scored! Leicester City are in dreamland now! That might be the goal that finally takes them to heaven. Because heaven is what these fans will regard the Premiership as. And Brian Little's team, thanks to the inspirational Steve Walsh, might just have made it at the 3rd attempt. And that's the final whistle. Leicester City have done it. Twice the Wembley losers, now the Wembley champions. And Steve Walsh has come back to give them glory and a place in the Premiership at long, long last.
It was a fitting reward to 3 unbelievable hard years' work.
City's first Premiership adventure was a struggle from the start. Just 2 victories gleaned from the first 14 matches. And their cause soon received a body blow when Brian Little and his coaches were tempted away by Aston Villa. It left chairman Martin George a far from happy man. He was threatening legal action.
People feel very let down, and they're entitled to demonstrate that feeling.
Do you still feel let down?
I just don't like to see people break contracts.
Where is that going now?
We are considering all the options. We shall have a look at all the evidence that there is, some still being gathered, and we shall then make a decision on that basis.
The question now was, who would be offered the next managerial contract?
Will you apply for the job?
No.
Why not?
I don't feel I have to apply for the job.
But you would take it if it was offered?
I didn't say that.
The names being thrown into the hat as possible replacements include Ron Atkinson, surely too expensive, sacked by Villa, of course, John Beck, now at Preston, and the Wycombe Wanderers boss, Martin O'Neill. He's very much the favourite tonight.
But it was City's turn for a spot of seduction. Mark McGee tempted away from Reading.
You don't walk into a place and have instant respect. It's how you perform that job. We play a passing game, but I believe we play it with pace and with power. That's what we'll be trying to achieve here. We'll initially try it with the squad of players that we've got here at the moment. If we can't do it with them, we will change it. But we'll be giving everyone that's at the club at the moment, and I mean everyone, because I'm starting with a clean slate, the opportunity to prove to me that, that they can do it.
Even though McGee insisted on a more purist passing style of football, his side couldn't bridge the already substantial gap between the Premiership and the rest of the league.
Oh, an inch! Oh, it definitely is ending on a high. Paul Ince makes it 4.
City were down again. By December the following season, the managerial merry-go-round was up and running again. McGee walked out for Wolves, and on the day that City met Norwich, their boss had upped sticks and left that morning. Thankfully, his next stop was Filbert Street.
That's a terrible ball. Heskey's in.